Welcome to Revolution Wellness Men's Health Podcast. I'm Jackie Edwards, Director of Marketing and Communications for RC Hospital and Clinics, and I'm joined today by Dr. Mark Ahlquist. Dr. Ahlquist, would you please share a little bit about yourself and what you enjoy most about practicing here at RC Hospital and Clinics?
Well, I'm a city boy, grew up in Robbinsdale, and came out here as a third-year medical student from the University of Minnesota and met the doctors here, and that's how I ended up out here long ago. Been here 30 plus years now. Graduated from Wheaton College in Illinois. Actually did something in between medical school and college called biochemistry and got a master's in that and realized I was not a chemist. So I really enjoy working with patients.
I think truly just, your patients and spending time with them one-on-one.
Yep. So I've always been... One part of the attraction to this practice was all four of us doctors were very patient-centered. The other three that I started with out here had all been missionaries overseas, and that attracted me as well. And because it was all about ministering, if you want to use that word, going the extra mile. And that's really been the heart of the way I love to practice medicine, so it was a privilege to work with them. Mm-hmm. And now we've managed, I believe, to maintain that, even though there's been huge transitions in the world of medicine and how it's going, at least in this little area of Renville County. Mm-hmm. It's still a big issue to put the patient first.
Absolutely.
And so that still makes it a pleasure to work here. And over the last 30 years, I've become more convinced than ever, because of my personal beliefs and spiritual background, that the heart of the family is what becomes the heart of the school and becomes the heart of the community and our nation. And we've been kind of getting ripped apart in the family for lots of reasons. And we talk about mental health today, and we talk about, what's the buzzword? Population health and all those things. They're really coming back to what we've always I have valued the most, which is the individual, and how they think and feel and believe affects your health. Mm-hmm. And it's just more obvious now than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. And that's the direction we're going. And of course, what came up in the first question that came out of the gate when we met as men was, so how big a deal is stress?
Yes.
And how much does it have on a person? And obviously, stress is everywhere.
Yep.
We have more people on antidepressants now than we've ever had. And
not just here in our county.
All over the country.
Right.
And even in the world, although the U.S. is kind of unique and we can afford all these pills, and it's amazing that we have so many that are mental health directed, because it's important and it's an issue. And so we have to be figuring that out.
Right. Right. And so, Dr. Ahlquist, you did mention the big topic at the Men's Health Lunch and Learn the other day was a lot about stress. So that's what we want to focus on today. So if you can kind of walk us through key signs of stress, how to cope with stress, and some good tips for those listening.
So one of my key signs that people are stressed, whether they either acknowledge it or not, is how well they sleep. And people all have, I think almost everybody's had that night where their heads were just spinning and they couldn't get whatever it was out of their mind.
Yep.
Whether it's your next test, if you're a student, or the job interview, or you're graduating, or it's the sport game or sport event or whatever. The stress of all those things, and now in adults it's still jobs and finances and marriages and raising kids. The stresses never end, whether it's weather, work, and of course that's a big issue this spring. Is the stress of just the economy and the work and the weather. And it also affects our health. There are a lot of diseases that are real that are affected by stress. And people don't always think of stress affecting other things, like your heart. We talked about that. If you have a heart problem and you start to stress, you put more pressure on the heart. And if it's not able to tolerate that pressure, you might get irregular rhythms, you might get heart attacks. You can raise your blood pressure and get a stroke when you normally might not get a stroke. And those kinds of things. If you have asthma, it can make your asthma flare. And the list goes on and on. So, yeah.
So how do we help handle stress? I know, sleeping's a big trigger point to determine, what's going on, but what do you do to help? I mean, take us through some steps on how do we start to manage our stress?
So I personally like to use medication, but I use medication like I would use a crutch for a broken leg. You don't plan to use the crutch the rest of your life, but you need it when you're trying to heal. So if you have emotional damage or emotional hurt or a fractured heart or something that's making you anxious or depressed, medication is like a crutch. It stabilizes things, stabilizes your mental, emotional health so you don't have these big swings, and it allows you, in some cases, you can sleep way better, you can focus a little better, but you need to then work on the problems you can fix. So it buys you time, because nobody can concentrate. Everybody's irritable when they don't sleep, and you can't focus, and molehills become mountains, those kinds of examples I was giving. So it's just very tough. And unless we can fix some of those issues, find a new job, you move differently, you work on a relationship, those are just as important as the medications. And sometimes we neglect that, and we just try and medicate, take a happy pill and expect the world to change in front of us, and it doesn't do that. So
Correct.
You got to do both things. They're very important.
And I'm assuming nutrition plays a big factor too. If you're not sleeping, you're probably not eating good.
That's correct. So there's a million factors that can play. They all work together. Healthy lifestyles decrease your stress. Obviously, when you're stressed, you can exercise. That helps. You can get better sleep. You can eat better. You can watch what you eat. Those are all general health principles that are good no matter what we're talking about, whether it's pneumonias or heart attacks or stress. They're good everywhere. So it's especially true with
And
the
I
stress.
think one piece that you also talked about that day was it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to go through this alone. It's okay to confide in somebody or to go see somebody.
We're not made to live life individually. We're made to be social people. We're made to be married and have families and grow up in those families, and then those families become communities. And the heart and soul of happy relationships and stress-free relationships is when those are working well. Being alone and being isolated is never healthy for almost anything.
Right. And that there are resources out there for people
lots
if
of
you
resources.
are alone. Very good. So
I should say with men, we're not very good at asking for help. The macho breed is, let's do it. I'm tough enough to handle it myself. Well, that will get you in trouble. You can be macho and say, you know what, I acknowledge I have my weaknesses, and I'm going to be macho enough to get help.
Right.
That's okay.
It is okay. Absolutely. Another part of the conversation that you guys talked about too was, and this just stuck out a little bit more with me, was the sleeping in the CPAP machines, and are they legit or not legit? If that's how it was deemed that day at the Lunch and Learn. So maybe you just want to talk a little bit about that and the importance of these tests and these machines and how they can help a body.
True confessions, my wife told me I was quitting breathing when I sleep, and I can't believe it because I don't make all the, I don't match the right profile for somebody with sleep apnea, but she was right, as a good wife usually is.
Exactly right.
And so I had the test, and so it's legitimate science, and there's lots of things tied to it. I have a lot of truck driver physicals and men who have sleep apnea, and they wouldn't go anywhere, even in their trucks, without their CPAP machines. It makes a huge difference. They swear by them, and these are big guys, who aren't always in the best of health, but they do know that they gotta, with their job, they can't afford to sleep on the job.
Right.
And so they feel better, they function better, but it's not just the daytime sleepiness, it's the overall effects on health, because theoretically, and they're starting to show these things, is that as you don't breathe at night, it accumulates. If you don't breathe a lot for, hundreds of times an hour or so, you can end up accumulating a lot of time without oxygen in your lungs, and that can do some kinds of damage to your lungs, which has a ripple effect towards your heart and other organs as that applies. So really, we're just beginning to learn about the effects downstream of not sleeping well and having